Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teamwork a Better Way podcast. I'm Christian Napier, joined by the man in blue, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
Fabulous. I'm so happy to be with the other man in blue. How are
Yeah,
you?
we color coordinated. Doing well. You showed me before we went on air here that you are recovering. It looks like fairly rapidly from your thumb surgery or your wrist surgery
Yeah.
or whatever it was.
So I had a therapist make this little specific customized thumb protector for me that I get to wear so that that it's healing, and it's healing quite quickly. I'm doing therapy every day on my own, and it's amazing. I mean, the surgery was just what 20 days ago, and it's amazing how quickly we start to heal. But it seems like it's not fast enough still.
Well, when you first showed that to me, I thought maybe you were getting into MMA or something, right? You ultimate fighting,
No,
ready to
yeah.
take some people out.
I got to stay far away from that. But well, hey, it's been a minute since I saw you in Florida.
Yeah, it's been a lot has transpired since then. We helped our daughter move the last of her belongings up to Seattle, and so we were up there up until the end of last week. And so I've only been back in town a few days since Influence because we went over there right after Influence up to Seattle. So how about you? You've been really busy too.
Yeah, I just got back from Las Vegas, and then going to tomorrow. I'm heading up to the mountains for camping with girls camp, and then Sunday headed to Sioux Falls to South Dakota, and just calendar is booked all the way till first week in October. I'm super excited about what's going on, but we have little spots here and there that we're going to have our podcast, and we have some great guests coming up. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to talk about that. Melissa and Fola and Tim Keating, CEO of RC Stevens Construction Company, past president of ABC. I mean, we're going to have some great guests on the show coming up,
Oh, I'm
interspersed through all
super
that
excited.
craziness.
Well, and then right before we get to our topic, we should note that this could be the last episode from your current digs.
Yeah, my see the pictures are down already behind me. We're packing up and moving. I've got 2.5 weeks, and we'll be in our new home.
Well, congratulations, and I can't wait to see the new place and see your new office. It's going to be super exciting to start going from there. But you chose, Spencer, a really interesting topic. I'm so excited to discuss it today with our listeners and viewers. So why don't you kind of bring us up to speed on what you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I just was really struck at our influence conference about the impact that mentors have on others, and not only that, but on themselves. I am so grateful for the mentors that I've had in my life, and I find myself spending a lot of time with other people, and I feel like this is such an important thing to understand as a leader, the benefits that it has for your organization to be a mentor, to be a sponsor. I'll talk about maybe some of the differences of those. And if you are somebody that is wanting to learn and to grow, to find a good mentor to help you. And we'll talk about maybe some of the things to look for and the benefits and some of the risks of mentorship, just because I think it has a profound impact on individuals and also on teams. When you have people that are willing to invest and sponsor others to help them succeed, it's really inspiring and amazing to me. And I was just thinking, who's got your back? Think about that right now. If you're listening to this, do you have somebody that has your best interest at heart, that you trust and they trust you? Do you have someone that's promoting, your brand? If you're a mentor, right, singing your praises as someone who is capable and helpful, who's expanding your capabilities by bringing skills that maybe you don't have, and who is extremely loyal to you. So those are some great benefits that that come. And so I was inspired, and I thought maybe we could talk about this a little bit, and some of the lessons through some of the lessons that you and I have learned.
Well, why don't we dive a little bit into what you witnessed there at the recent influence conference? So give us a little bit of the background here. You're at uh, the Speaker Hall of Fame induction, I guess, for lack of a better term, uh, and people are up there talking and giving their speeches and whatnot. So unfortunately, I was not able to attend because I had to catch a plane to get back home. But you were able to be there, and what did you see?
Well, first of all, just so impressed with the quality of the speakers that were inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. It's what's called CPAE, and this is a an award that is given because of your peers recognizing your excellence as a speaker. And every year there's 4 or 5 that are chosen and nominated, and then peers review board looks at them. And of course, they get up and they talk about how they got there. And in almost every case, there was somebody that helped them, that mentored them, that taught them the business, the ins and outs. And it's interesting. One of the ones that I heard was Dr. Delatoro McNeil, and one of the things they said about him is that he has mentored 5 CSPs. Well, the CSP is a certified speaking professional. So here's somebody who's now inducted into the Hall of Fame who has helped other people become very successful. It's the highest earned award that you can get as the CSP. And so he's helped 5 of them. And one of them we happen to have on our show, and that was Frank Kitchen. If you recall, I think back in January or February time frame, we had Frank, and he is an incredible speaker, just a wonderful human being. And turns out that Dr. Delatoro was his mentor. And so I'm like, wow, there's such an interesting connection between those who are successful, most successful, and who are really up and coming. And I look at Frank, and he's just such a great guy, but he's doing so many things. He's involved in the association. He's out in his community. He's creating an incredible brand, and I'm sure he's learned a lot of that from Dr. Delatoro, who, interestingly enough, said that his mentor was also at the NSA event, who happens to be Les Brown. I don't know if you've ever heard of people listening have almost assuredly heard of Les Brown, who is a famous motivational speaker, and he's highly, highly regarded. Well, he happened to be at the conference today because his protege, Dr. Delatoro McNeil, was getting the CPAE. Well, it turns out that Les Brown also had a mentor, and that mentor is Mike Williams. And so Les credits his success to Mike Williams as a communication expert, and said, he recognized Brown's talent and mentored him on refining his speaking skills and amplifying his message and building his career as a professional speaker. I'm like, you know what? We all need somebody. I've been speaking for a long time, and the longer that I'm in this business, the more I realize how much there is to know. I don't think people really understand what public speaking is all about. I think, well, you just get up and present or talk to slides and tell people about your expertise. There's so much to it as you're learning, right? And you're meeting all these great speakers, and there's just so much to learn. And I'm so excited to learn. And I've learned a lot from other great people. But at this phase in my life, I feel a little bit of a lack, because I'd like to have, I'm getting older, but I still think that there's so much I have to learn. I still want a mentor and somebody that I can turn to. And so I just was really, really struck. And so that's where this idea to talk about this came from today.
I have to ask you a question here, Spencer. What's the difference between a mentor and, say, a boss or a coach or an advisor? What is it that kind of separates a mentor from these other people who who could they can be helpful, right?
Yeah,
And but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're mentors. And mentors may not be coaches or advisors, or it may not be your boss, right?
that's
Especially
right.
in the speaking profession. So, what is it that kind of distinguishes a mentor from some of these other roles that other people might play?
Well, I mean, you could, a coach and a boss can be a mentor. I think it has to do with the relationship and the longevity of that relationship. I think, a boss is someone who is responsible for creating certain outcomes, and so, you are an employee and you report to them, and you show up and you do your job, and you hit your goals and your numbers and you get reviews. The mentorship relationship goes deeper. It goes to the fact that you have a vested interest in a member of your team that you are going to help learn the industry, the business, you know, actually this whole process of mentorship is how, anybody ever used to learn how to learn any career. You would go, if you were going to become a blacksmith, you would choose a blacksmith. Well, the blacksmith would have to choose somebody that was going to stick with it and work hard and make their time worth it, right? I mean, that was your education. You would work with somebody for a long time, and not just to boss them around, but to teach them so that eventually they could go out on their own. I think a mentor, and there's actually another level of mentor, which is called a sponsor. A sponsor is someone that really has your best interest at heart, that uh, has a vested interest in your success, may introduce you to additional opportunities, may promote you and your brand, may help you to go out on your own. So not only mentor you, but really work towards your success. And I think that, like I say, a boss or a coach can do that, but most of the time, bosses are just, hey, you need to do your job, what I pay you to do, and I like you and respect you, and we show up, but I'm not spending that extra time to really help you get to where I am. I think that's the big difference. What do you think the difference is?
Uh, that I echo everything that you said. I think another thing that's really interesting with mentorship, uh, from a mentee standpoint, it's very easy to see the benefits of having a mentor, right? So you have access to networks, you learn new things that maybe you otherwise wouldn't learn, very nuanced things. When it comes to the mentor, what are the benefits, right? We look at, for example, in sport, we were talking about this beforehand. Coaching trees, right? There,
Yeah,
you have you have coaches who have. Let's take football for example. You have offensive and defensive coordinators, and they have position coaches,
right.
and you can see these coaching trees. It's almost like a genealogy of coaching. You look at the National Basketball Association. It seems to me like half of the coaches, the head coaches, used to work for Greg Popovich, and he was their mentor in some respect. And when I talk about the benefits, one of the challenges I think, but also maybe one of the more altruistic results of mentorship is that you are either training your replacement, or you are mentoring someone to leave the nest and leave you, and if they are a subordinate, which means that you are almost planning attrition, right? It's like, hey, I'm helping this person grow, and they're going to become amazing, and eventually they're going to want to leave this nest that I have built. And so, there might be a tendency to kind of say, well, I don't know, it, maybe the costs are significant because I'm going to lose this star that I have cultivated,
Yeah.
and they're going to leave, and I'm going to have to find another one. But
So
so
think of Mike Krzyzewski, for example, a head coach at Duke University, and who was his mentor? Dean Smith at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, right? And so I remember when Krzyzewski's teams would beat Dean Smith, it's like, oh, it's the protege beating the mentor, and what a big deal that was. And so it's like, wow, I'm training my competition to come back and beat me if I'm a coach or a player, or even in business, right? Somebody's going to go out and compete against me. So I think it's a good question and a fair question. And I think there's still some very, very clear benefits. How does Mike Krzyzewski talk about Dean Smith?
Oh, with reverence, and utmost respect
How do
and
people
gratitude.
and gratitude? How do people talk about Greg Popovich, who've worked for him?
The same, right? Uh,
Love, adoration, and gratitude, and they still will call him and talk about, hey, I have this problem, and he still helps them even though they're on a competing team. So why would he do that? Well, first of all, what happens if you keep all of that knowledge and all of that information to yourself? Well,
well, you just can't function. I mean, you can't do everything by yourself,
you
right?
can't do everything by yourself. But you think I think of the metaphor of the Dead Sea, right? Nothing's flowing out of it. It just everything's coming into it, but it's holding on to it. It's not giving out of it. I think the whole rhythm or circle of life is we create our replacements. We share, we pass on what we have. There's no legacy without that. There's no growth of the next generation without it. So we, as mentors or people that have knowledge, once we share it, it helps us to live, to grow, uh, to be remembered. But more importantly, while those people were on the staff of those coaches, or even in your business or on your team, hopefully they're bringing value to you as a mentor, as a leader in your organization. And hopefully, as you said, they're making it easier because you're not doing it all on your own. It is, I think, incumbent on mentors or sponsors to find people who actually complement them. This is a plug for inclusiveness, right? So find someone of a different gender, different sex, different backgrounds, different language, and mentor them. Why? Because they're going to bring a perspective to the team that you as a mentor may not have. And you are then able to share what you have and your perspective and your knowledge on them. And then they then in turn feed back to the organization their experience, their loyalty, their commitment, their gratitude, certainly while they're with you. Or you can just be a boss, tell them what to do, and have them be a crappy employee and leave you and badmouth you. Which would you rather have?
Well, it's interesting to hear you say this, Spencer, because, oftentimes, again, I kind of go back to the sports. When you look at the coaches, uh,
Yeah.
when a new head coach is hired, he's never done it before, or she's never done it before. Uh, what they do oftentimes is take influences from their mentor, but they're not carbon copies. To your point,
Oh, for sure.
they are bringing their own perspective and adding to the knowledge and the wisdom that their mentor has provided. So
Right.
they create a different way. Uh, and and it just reinforces what you were saying, which is if you just do it yourself and you don't mentor people, then it's very easy for you to become scale and to be limited because not only do you have a lack of capacity, but it shows that you're not necessarily open to new ideas from
And, yeah,
people. And
and you're
so,
not growing and changing. And so, as a mentor, the benefit is you have people pouring back into you new perspectives, new ideas, and that's what that inclusiveness brings is new perspective for the mentor. And there are so many benefits to the team from that, bringing that new perspective back in. So that's why you train your competition because while they're there, they're going to make a huge impact. And when they leave, they're going to promote you. They're going to promote your brand, which means you have the opportunity to mentor someone else. And this is a process that should not just be, a year or two. I mean, if you think about, for example, here in our valley, we live out in the West. We have some, we love football here in the state of Utah. We have some great head coaches. The University of Utah has been coached by over 20 years by Kyle Whittingham. who was a protege of Lavelle Edwards, and I know you want to. I want you to talk about that, and also Kalani Sitake was a protege of Edwards and Whittingham. And now they're competitors, right? They're at different universities, but they love each other. They spend time. They talk to each other. They help each other because, again, they bring that varied experience. So even though they're competitors, the benefit of having someone that you know and trust means that you can counsel together, and there's a benefit in that. And Lavelle Edwards has so many proteges. Why? Because people are not going to stay with you. They're not going to stay with you even if you treat them amazingly well and pay them so much. Why? Because eventually people need to grow on their own. It's going to happen. Well, do you want them to leave and talk bad about you, or do you want them to say good things about you? And so that you have the opportunity to get the best proteges and mentees possible. If you think about the recruiting process, when we opened up the transfer portal, where do players go? They go where they're going to get attention and learning and growth opportunities. When you take a job, hopefully you're taking a job where you're going to get investment of energy and time from somebody. If not, you need to go somewhere else, right? So if you create a culture of where you're mentoring people, the chances of you getting the best proteges goes up. Now, there is a risk of being a sponsor, right, or a mentor, and that is that you have someone that you have invest time and energy in, and they fail, and that in many ways can hurt your brand, right? It can be a negative reflection on you. So one of the things that you need to be careful of is who you mentor. In many respects, they need to be worthy of your attention. There needs to be some due diligence on your part because they need to be trustworthy enough. If you're mentoring somebody that's bad mouthing you or taking advantage of your good efforts on their behalf, that's not a great relationship. It's a dysfunctional relationship. So you want to study. You want to sure if you're a protege, you want to find the best mentor, and the mentors want to find the best proteges. It's why coaches want to recruit the best potential players to be on their team.
Well, I want to come back to what you were saying about the coaches here in the state of Utah, because relationships, it really comes down to relationships. As you
Sure.
mentioned, uh, both Kyle Whittingham and Kalani Sitake, they maintained relationships with their mentor, Lavelle Edwards, long after they left that program.
Right.
Similarly, Urban Meyer was the head coach and very successful, a bit controversial these days, but very successful during his short tenure at Utah. He left in 2004. Kyle Whittingham was his defensive coordinator, later promoted to head coach. They talk almost every week. Today,
Yeah.
almost 20 years later, that's what a great mentor does, right? And a great
Yeah. Like I
mentee
said, it's
does.
not a 2 or 3 year commitment. It's
Right.
a lifetime.
It's right. It's a lifetime. These people, they stay connected for decades after they've worked together, after the other person has left the nest. They stay connected and they continue to help each other. And that's why I think a mentorship, is really based on a healthy relationship that is mutually beneficial. It benefits both parties.
That's right. And that's why picking the right protege for trustworthiness is really, really important if you're choosing to mentor someone. Obviously, you can't pour into everyone. So, pick one or two that you're working with because it takes energy. Yet, as you said earlier, the benefit is that you're getting your increased capacity to get things done if you bring someone in with different skill sets than you to work with you, and you're getting that loyalty, and you just there's so many things that benefit. So let's take just a quick break. So we've talked about risks. We've talked about how to pick. I want to mention just a couple of books that I think are some great examples, and then maybe we can talk about some other examples of mentors. One of the books that I'm reading for this is just such an incredible knowledge in this book, and if you haven't read it and you're in business, I recommend it, and that is Measure What Matters by John Doerr. John is teaching the principle of objectives and key results, management by objectives and key results. And it's a system that he learned from his mentor, Andy Grove. Now, Andy Grove was the third CEO of Intel Corporation, and he escaped from Hungary in the People's Republic of Hungary in 1956 during the revolution. I think it's funny he had to escape from a People's Republic, right? But where there was great oppression, and he came to this country. He was driven and motivated. He created an incredible organization, but he created this concept. So often, we've been taught about key performing indicators or KPIs, and they really don't have a soul. And he wanted to create a system where you could have an overall objective and then key results that tied to that, but not just from the top down, that were really living and dynamic and bought into by the entire team. And he was so good at it that John Doerr learned this system and then went on and shared it with the founders of Google. And when he first met with them, they had an idea of how big they could be in terms of capex, and you think you could be 10 billion, I think, and they said, we think we can be 10 billion. They're hundreds of billions in capex, but they credit John Doerr's meeting with them when they started about setting up this process, and he worked with them over the years, and that system that he learned from Andy Grove came into Google, and so many other people are using this. It's just the impact that one person, Andy Grove, and I'm sure he was impacted by somebody else, can have on our world today. And so I think that's a great book, and the knowledge that you learn in this is spectacular to help you to set goals for your organization, for your teams. And the other one is what's called the sponsor effect. And this is just how to be, a better leader by investing in others, which is what we're talking about. And in this, there are they call sponsorship. It's just taking mentorship to the next level. And there are 7 steps that Sylvia Ann Hewlett shares, and I just want to share these with you and our listeners. Number 1, identify potential proteges. Know what to look for in the talent you're considering sponsoring, starting with performance and loyalty. Not everybody earns the right for your time and attention. You've got to find people that are willing to be taught, to be humble, and again, to not just because they're going to tout your brand, but because you want to have someone that is worthy of your effort. And I think that's appropriate. Comments about that? You agree?
Oh yeah, I totally agree, 100%. I don't know if those items that you've got, the 7 items, are ranked, but I would be hard pressed to find something that's probably more important than that. I mean,
Right.
what do you think?
So both way, I think it's both ways. Find the right mentor and the right protege, and that may take some time. So don't rush to that right away, or just because you feel like you need to be a mentor or have proteges. Be wise. Yeah. Number 2, include diverse perspectives. We talked a little bit about that. Find those who are different from you in their mindset and viewpoints, or in their gender, age, ethnicity, experience, or background. And for the reasons that we talked about, they're going to bring a diversity to the team, to you, to your capabilities, and I think that are very important.
Yeah, once again, here I am echoing uh, echoing the thought, which is, and we've talked about it already, how important it is to have that diversity, because it expands you. It doesn't stagnate you, right?
Exactly. Number 3, inspire for performance and loyalty. Ensure that your proteges values align with yours and use their passion and ambition to spur them forward. That's important. If you have someone that has different values than you, that's that's going to lead to a divorce, right? I mean, you want to be able to have someone that, if integrity is important to you, they're integrous, right? They are someone that you can trust and respect, because you're going to share with them your secrets and what you know, and so I think that's really really important.
All right, so playing devil's advocate here, Spencer, what's the difference between bringing on diverse viewpoints and having differences in values?
I think that is a great question. You know, I you like to throw me on the spot, and I love it.
I'm sorry, yeah,
No,
I just
no, no.
tossed you out that.
This is perfect, because one of I just taught. You remember? I don't know if it was. I think it was 2 years ago. I did that sales training with you, Melissa, and everybody. That we did that during the pandemic virtually.
Yep.
It's called Results in Sales and Business Development. And a big message of this workshop is understanding our own biases and how that gets in our way as salespeople, and how to begin to, if you can learn to connect with people that are different than you, um, your your sales will increase without having any more leads. Just there are certain people that are repelled by us, and we by them, by how they communicate and how they behave. And some people believe it's inauthentic to adapt to your environment. I disagree, because I'm not asking you to change your values or your beliefs. Your values inform your beliefs, and those beliefs create expectations. Those expectations lead to your attitudes. Your attitudes lead to your behavior. So if you have a value, for example, that all people are deserving of your kindness and attention, um, that you value treating people fairly, right? Then your belief is that you're going to treat them with dignity and respect. Now that could mean that the expectation is that's reciprocated, and if it's not, you might react negatively. But if you believe your value is that you're going to do that unconditionally, then it doesn't matter how they respond to you, and that will affect your attitude and your behavior. I can have a goal to treat people with dignity and respect, and because that comes from my values of how I think people should be respected and treated, which means my behavior is I'm going to adapt so that I can give them the best possible experience and treat them in a way that is that they feel respected. That's in alignment with my values. If your goal is to be, bottom line driven and hit big numbers in sales, or just profitability, and that means you need to change your approach, I think you'll do it, because that's in alignment with your values, right? I'm asking you to change behavior, not values. So when it comes to finding somebody that thinks differently and acts differently, your values can be in alignment, but you can express it differently. So I don't think there's any conflict there.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if I had a value that was, well, it's survival of the fittest, and to each his own or her own, and you get what you deserve, then our core values conflict, because my value is every person matters and they deserve to be treated with kindness and respect. And if your underlying value is
People are to be
uh,
used and abused, and there are people with that. You're replaceable. You are a cog in the machine.
yeah, so then it's not going to work, right? Even if we were somehow able to align our behaviors, I think those underlying values would be so conflicting that over time it just would break down. So
That's exactly right. That's why that matters. So number 4 is work with them to fill the skills gap, right? Because they are going to be needing to develop skills that they don't have. That's why you're working with them and mentoring them. So you need to develop them where they need to grow, and that could be in hard knowledge or soft skills. Again, for people listening, I hate those words, soft skills, and that really comes from the military. I think we've mentioned this, at some point in our podcast. They called hard skills being able to shoot a machine gun or drive a tank or fix a piece of equipment, and the soft skills were all about the motivation and the engaging of the people who do those things. And soft skills are infinitely more valuable. I mean, you need to have the hard skills, but they have the biggest impact on the success of the unit. And so that's where those words come from. But sometimes I think people listen to those and they hear that soft skills and they think, oh, those are the less important things. So both hard skills and soft skills, you have to identify those gaps and help them. Step number 5, inspect your prospects. Keep an eye on your proteges to ensure that they're continuing to deliver performance, and most importantly, that they're continuing to be trustworthy, because you may need to address that. I've told the story of my mentor, Kelvin Cullimore, who I admire and just revere. But Kelvin was tough, and he was tough on me. And I remember one time he sat me down and he said, "Spencer, you've got to make some changes in your role, and I'm going to give you 6 months to turn it around. Here's what you need to do. But if you can't do that, I'm going to have to find someone else that will." But as my mentor, he's like, "Okay, I have expectations of you." And I think a coach does the same thing. You sometimes have a player that gets in a funk or in their head, and you got to take them out of the game. You got to sit them for a while until they are back where they can be productive. Well, because of my relationship with Kelvin, I was not frustrated or deterred. Some people today may look at that and say, "Oh, that's just, you know, you shouldn't you shouldn't threaten someone to lose their job. That is, that those are power dynamics." And I'm like, "No, he told me exactly what I needed to do to be successful, not only for me, but to help the company. That's why I'm there." He once said something that initially irritated me. He said, "Your job is to make my job easier." Was he right?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound fair. You're supposed to be the boss. I'm making your job easy. But what you have to realize is he was running 2 publicly traded companies. Extremely busy individual, so many responsibilities. And if I wasn't making his life easier by bringing value, what use am I? But that's a hard doctrine, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, but you know what? I appreciate this approach because when you talk about this fifth point, which is filling skills gaps, right? Depending on the individual, they may just not be able to fill those gaps for whatever reason, right? It's just
Right.
not in their wheelhouse, and so I actually think it's it sounds a bit morbid, but it's benevolent to say, okay, I'm going to give you this amount of time to get this figured out. And if you can't figure it out, it just means that we have a skills gap that we cannot fix.
Right.
And then there's no point in having you just continue in this role because you're just going to repeatedly fail. So let's find a place for where you can be successful. And I just, that's kind of the way that I kind of look at that is, yes, it could come across as harsh, or like you talk about this power dynamics, but actually in my view, it's actually a benevolent thing. Hey, yeah, I want you to succeed. This is what it takes to be successful here. If you can't do that, it's all right. There could be another place for you where your skills that you have could be put to better use.
And he was absolutely benevolent. He truly did cared about me, cared about my family. But part of his due diligence was he knew me from our church organization. He actually interviewed me I happened to be serving in a position at the time up at the University of Utah at a student branch of our church, and he interviewed me because he became the new regional leader. I mean, kind of like a Monsignor, or we call it a stake president. And I was serving on a high council, and he interviewed me, decided to keep me, but he got to know me there. And when he interviewed me, he brought me out, brought me out to where I would be living, and brought my wife because he wanted to observe how we interacted, how I treated her. He even told me that afterwards. Here was somebody who was wise in who he hired, and even though I had my failings, he saw something in my wife that enabled him to hire me. He trusted her maybe more than he trusted me, but for me, because of the relationship and trust I had in him, his challenge to me motivated me. And after the end of that 6 months, he promoted me to vice president. I became, at 27 years old, I was vice president of a publicly traded company, and it was, huge responsibility and liability on my part. But I had been mentored by someone that I trusted and knew that would not put me in a position to fail, and challenge me at the same time, benevolently, as you said. And I think that's exactly right.
Oh, we got two things left here, Spencer, on your
Okay.
list, right?
Instigate a deal, having inspired, instructed, and inspected. Now make the ask. So, basically, it has to go two ways. Say, I'm going to find someone that I want to make you my protege. And so go out and ask. And possibly, if you're somebody looking for a mentor, if you're just looking for a mentor because you need help, uh, you need to do a little bit of due diligence and show why you deserve their time and attention. Because you can certainly ask yourself, listen, I'd love it if you'd be my mentor. And that may sound like it's, what's the word? Flattering, but you've got to make sure that you're going to be doing the work.
I'm curious about this, Spencer. I have a couple of people in my life who I considered mentors,
Yeah.
but we never had this kind of formal arrangement. It just was, I guess it was almost unspoken.
Yeah.
They took me under their wing. I learned a lot from them. We stayed in touch for years afterwards, but it just kind of happened organically. It wasn't something that I was necessarily, actively asking or formally asking, could you be my mentor, or vice versa? The person saying, hey, I want you to be my protege. So I'm not familiar personally with the experience of having to do this kind of formal ask. I mean, what's your experience been in this
So,
regard?
one I just shared with you, and that was formal in the sense that I was interviewed and hired, and then, Kelvin became my mentor. I don't know that we had a formal contract other than I worked for him, so he was my boss, but he was much more than that. And so it's a mentor relationship because the relationship went beyond just work. Um, and in addition to that, I have been involved in organizations like Project Management Institute, where different chapters, they have mentorship programs for project managers, especially up and coming project managers, or even project managers that are experienced but want the access to someone that has more experience, and they have a formalized coaching process. So I did that for several years with one chapter in Poland, for example. I'm actually going to be speaking to them this to the start of their mentor program in September, to all the mentors that will be mentoring others. But the process was very formal. They would identify mentors, and they would, and it's not just coaching, right? I mean, they have access to you when they have problems, and you can have conversations, and there's definitely coaching to it. But they wanted to find someone that was a good fit, again, for both, so that it was a positive, engaging experience. So there are programs that match people together. Then there are organizations, for example, like at PwC, where they find internal mentors, and they give them almost like a sabbatical for 2 years, where they no longer have day-to-day P&L responsibilities, but they are senior managers within the firm that spends time with a protege, and it is a formalized process. They actually, it's like they're taking a sabbatical from work, from doing the everyday responsibilities, to now developing their replacements, and it is a purposeful program.
Yeah, and I like all of those ideas. Sometimes I wonder, uh, you know, talking about things like alignment of values and so on and so forth, right? Sometimes there is a risk in these more formalized programs where you're kind of forcing someone, you're forcing people together that may not necessarily be the right fit. And care must be taken, but I really like that approach. Okay, one more of the last item on your list.
Okay, you got to be all in, and you got to commit your political capital, your clout, uh, providing some air cover so that your proteges can take risks, and they're going to mess up, and so you need to recognize that that's going to happen, and you gotta help them. You got to help them work through that, and obviously that means you have to have enough political capital to be able to take some hits now and then, because you know think of every sporting organization. I mean, there are losses that happen. There are mistakes that are made. There are shots that are missed. There are matchups that don't work, and so you have to adjust and work through those difficulties. Just like Kelvin worked through those with me. He gave me some time to right the ship, and I did that. So he was all in, but he also was committed to making sure that I knew what the expectations were, and it wasn't a blank check. So
Well, ultimately, it comes down to, do I believe in this person,
yeah,
right? And if you believe in them, then you're willing to do that. And coming back to the sports analogy, uh, no, in coaching, for example, no coach is undefeated. No player hits every shot. Uh,
exactly.
you might make 52% of your shots, which means that you're failing 48% of the time. Or you might win, if you're Kyle Winningham, you might have a winning percentage that's like 65% to 70%. I don't remember what this exact percentage is, which means that you're quote unquote failing 30 to 35% of the time, right? So you can't expect everybody to be flawless. They can't be perfect, but you can still have a belief in them, and ultimately they'll deliver you more wins than they will losses.
So one of the things I put on our little promo for today is, get unstuck. And if you're feeling stuck right now in your career, in your job, in your wherever you are, you may be a solopreneur, you may be at the top of your organization, and you're feeling like you're just something's not there. I think it is incumbent to find someone to help you to get unstuck. And I approach people all the time. They certainly help me with those things, but I think having that ask for a more formal relationship is important. And if you look at the sports world, I mean, Michael Jordan mentored Kobe. Serena Williams had Billie Jean King. You've got Drew Brees and Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's a future Hall of Fame quarterback, and he was mentored by Drew Brees. Tiger Woods, well, he learned from Jack Nicklaus, one of the greatest of all times. In business, Warren Buffett's one of the most successful investors in history, took young Bill Gates under his wing. Look where Bill is today. Uh, Oprah Winfrey, she had Gayle King. She's a media mogul, and she learned from Gayle, who was a prominent journalist and television personality, and guided her through all the challenges and where are the pitfalls, and look at the success that she's had. Mark Zuckerberg, uh, has Sheryl Sandberg. When she joined as the chief operating officer back in 2008, they formed a mentoring relationship. Now Cheryl is just doing incredible things. Steve Jobs was the one who helped Mark Zuckerberg. So you can see this, just like you said, coaching tree, the same as in business. Well, that takes us back to where I started. There are so many speakers out there. Tony Robbins, he learned from John Rohn, Brene Brown from Maya Angelou, uh, Mel Robbins from Chris Wiedner. People who are doing some of the greatest things in their field didn't just get there on their own. They got there with and through the encouragement, the teaching, the empowerment, the correction of a mentor or sponsor. And those sponsors benefit so much by giving to others and keeping them young and getting back that new perspective. And I encourage you, if you are wanting to be a mentor or sponsor, that you do that and you find someone that is worthy of your attention and you get all in. And I think that the benefits that come from this will be huge. So I think that's the message for today, and help others get unstuck, and you get unstuck yourself by finding someone who's willing to invest in you.
All right, Spencer. Well, if people are looking to get unstuck, either they're trying to find someone to as a successor, so they want to be a mentor, or they are looking for a mentor. You can help them. What's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just Spencer Horn, Altium Leadership, and happy to talk. I was just asked recently to mentor somebody. So, and people need it. They want it. And again, look for someone that is more diverse from you. I think that's important. And so, how can people? I know you have so much knowledge to give, and you are giving it to your clients and to me always every time we talk. How can people get a hold of you?
Same way, Spencer. Just find me on LinkedIn. Look up Christian Napier. You'll find me there. So thank you, Spencer, for another illuminating hour of conversation. I really appreciate it. And
Did
listeners
it
and viewers,
already an hour?
I know, time flies. Listeners, viewers, please like us and subscribe to our podcast. We'll catch you again soon.